I'm joined now by an economic analyst, Dr. Emmanuel Ideyi, to discuss, the recent revoked license of the Heritage Bank and, matters arising. Thank you, Doctor, for joining us on Business Daily this morning.
Well, good morning, viewers, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Doctor, I would like for us to start, with the debate that has been, ongoing for a while now, talking about or revoking the license of the bank and maybe acquiring a merger that some are saying that could have been a better option. What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you very much for this conversation, which affects almost everybody. The truth is, the central bank will not just wake up and revoke a banking license. That is the last resort. Unfortunately, many people would not have known what the central bank would have been doing in the last 10 years, particularly for this commercial bank. That is not in the public domain, but we all know, for those of us who are industry watchers, and we need to know that central bank will resort to revocation as a last resort because there is no other option for the central bank. Many people would not know that the Heritage Bank, as it was until it was liquidated, was the reissued license of Societe Generale Bank that was previously revoked before 2012. And when that license was reissued by the central bank to Societe Generale, they looked for partners, and that was where they floated what was called Heritage Bank of Nigeria Limited, and Societe Generale had to partner with it to begin to run it. And the central bank is aware. And what was it supposed to do? To bring back depositors' confidence. The depositors of the former Societe Generale, they won't lose their funds, and they started operating. Now, the central bank will advise banks from time to time, your shareholders' funds, your cash reserve ratio, your capital adequacy ratio, all these things must be in place. Your non-performing loans must not be above the threshold. And central bank kept on looking at this. In the real sense of the word, Heritage Bank should have been liquidated since 2017. That's the truth. But central bank will not just wake up and liquidate. They gave opportunities, gave the management opportunity to get, investors. What is your non-performing loan? Why are these loans bad? If you check, most of the bad loans are as a result of insider abuses by the management of the bank and top shareholders of the bank. And the central bank will not sit by and watch it. Central bank also will even suggest possible banks that can take over or merge with it. But those banks will also want to appraise their financials. How toxic is this asset? If we acquire them, will it not affect our own position? For instance, if you say a bank A who is doing well is being advised by central bank to acquire the now Heritage Bank, the bank will want to look at their position, look at their exposure. The report by the central bank and NDIC says that their non-performing loan is almost over 90% of their shareholders' funds, meaning that the shareholders did not do anything, watch the bank's performance. Their exposure is over 600 billion naira debt. Now, and Heritage Bank has only over 100 physical branches. So, when central bank could not continue, in fact, if you are aware, it's also in the public domain that a tier 1 bank, which I don't want to mention their name, advanced as much as 500 billion to Heritage Bank 5 years ago, hoping that it will help them recapitalize and have liquidity. But that didn't help, meaning there's a obvious management problem, obvious shareholders' lack of commitment to recapitalize the bank, and CBN cannot keep watching, and they had to step in. Unfortunately, many people are looking at it as Cardoso is doing something bad, but this has started even before Cardoso came. It's a process. It's a process, and the only option now is to say, okay, let depositors not lose their fund, let everybody that has 5 million below, you will get your money. NDIC came out yesterday to say 99% of the customers of Heritage Bank don't have more than 5 million. 99%. Only 4,000 people have over 5 million and above. And what will now happen is when these people who have 5 million below are settled within the next 7 days, according to NDIC will now appoint a liquidator that will crystallize all their assets, physical assets. Then they will settle the debt because they are actually owing a debtors up to 600 billion. Once that is done, every other person that has above that 5 million will now be paid what is called liquidation dividend. I know of somebody that has 400 million naira in fixed deposits with Heritage Bank. Fixed deposits. So these are the real issues, and NDIC and the central bank will not breach the prudential guideline of the central bank as amended 2020 in this liquidation process. But unfortunately, we are people that are not too aware until now. You will see claims and counterclaims going up and down, and the signal has been there for over 5 years. That's the truth. The signals have been there.
Well said there, Doctor, talking about how the had been there 5 years. Well, let's go on a short break. When we return, conversation continues, and my guest, who is Dr. Emmanuel Idenyi, is still on stand. And you're still watching Business Daily, that is coming to you live on Trust TV. And just before the break, we started our conversations on the revoked license of Heritage Bank by the Central Bank of Nigeria. And my guest, Dr. Emmanuel Idenyi, is still here with us. Thank you again, Doctor, for coming on the program this morning.
Pleasure to be here always.
Doctor, just before the break, you talked about the journey so far with Heritage Bank, and how, the Heritage Bank had, had issues around bad loans, non-performing loans for quite a while now. We also have seen, the effort of the asset management, that is AMCOM, in the past, trying to ensure that Heritage Bank is able to stand. However, we have, come up to terms with the fact that the license of the bank has been withdrawn by the CBN. But I would like for us to touch on the economic implications of this, especially, the long-term effect of this in the area of the Nigerian banking sector and, the broader economy as a whole. What would be the impact of that on the banking sector specifically?
Thank you very much. Now, what people need to understand is the banking sector is one of the most regulated sector in the financial system anywhere, because livelihood and growth of the economy depends on the health status of the banking industry. And that's why if anything happens to the banking industry, the impact on the economy depends on it to a large extent. Now, with this that has happened, speculations are even on that they might revoke the licenses of some other banks, but the central bank has come out to say no such thing is in the offing. Now, the central bank wouldn't have woken up to just liquidate the license, revoke the license of Heritage Bank. There would have been options on the table. So like I said, it is not the present governor of the central bank that even liquidated the bank. This is a process that has come before this present governor. So they would have looked at the economic implication, and that's why confidence of the depositors is usually guaranteed, and that's why every deposit in all the commercial banks is insured by the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation. No bank as of today that the deposits in the bank, which is of the customer, is not insured by NDIC. But of course, there is a knowledge gap. There is an ignorance level that a lot of depositors in the bank they play with. But that has to do with enlightenment, and that's why I love the way the NDIC swung into action to let depositors know that their funds are secure. In the real sense of the word, it is the shareholders of the bank and the management that actually mismanage the bank. And that's why it is the shareholders and the management that will bear the larger brunt not the customers. Because every shareholder means that he has a measure of his worth or investment put in the bank. So it is incumbent on the shareholders to ensure that they manage the deposits, manage the resources, the loans, the non-performing loans. CBN says the non-performing loan should not be more than 5%. How come it is more than that? Is that eating up to the shareholders' fund? Or should we wait for customers to wake up and Heritage Bank cannot meet its obligation anymore? CBN will not allow that to happen. That's why CBN had to swing into action immediately. So the confidence in the banking industry may be shaking. That's the truth. Particularly because there are insinuations in some quarters that some banks are not healthy, they are not, they might also be revoked, their licenses might also be revoked. But the truth of the matter is, it is the responsibility of the central bank to assure depositors that their deposits are guaranteed. And part of this liquidation now is to tell people that the banking sector is healthy. That's the truth. But CBN has put that information out, but it is left for depositors or customers to accept that information by the central bank, telling them that they can draw their money from each commercial bank when they want. Few months ago, even depositors or customers of Heritage Bank couldn't withdraw more than 20,000 naira. That was a signal. But many people, didn't take it for granted. People couldn't withdraw. You give a transfer instruction of 200,000, people couldn't withdraw. And this is a sign, and people are not aware, because we do not believe some things in Nigeria until it crystallizes. And that is why the CBN, to avoid customers losing their deposit, they went ahead and said, well, we are empowered by law in BOFIA and the Bank and the CBN Act to take our responsibilities to secure depositors, to secure customers' confidence. And they took the decision they took. You cannot tell me that all this decision happened in less than 1 year that Cardoso was central bank governor. Definitely not. The reports are there. He studied them before taking this step. I can tell you for free that consultations were done widely. And if you know, the Heritage Bank is not quoted on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, so they don't have stock because it's limited. And this has been right from when they were incorporated. So it goes back to say that there are people behind the mismanagement of heritage banks, and I dare say most of them are politicians that are part owners of the bank that took some of these loans to do things that did not bring profit to the bank. And the MD of the bank cannot even talk because he is at the whims and caprices of the owners of the bank. And look at where it has brought us. And that's why the central bank said, no, customers will not lose their deposit. Let's pay them their money. Then let the shareholders bear the larger brunt because they mismanaged the bank. And that is why CBN swung into action. And everything that CBN and NBIC is going to do is laid down in BOFIA, is laid down in how you liquidate a bank, and everything is properly laid down. But unfortunately, there is a large ignorance level. People will play to their emotions and say all manner of things. But the truth is, this is to save the system. And this again will make other banks who their books are not healthy to sit up, because CBN will not say because we said no bank license will be revoked, will not take necessary actions when there are issues. People are even making giving options of a bridge bank, just like what happened to other banks. Take out the management and let somebody else manage it for a while. But their assets were so toxic that nobody was willing to buy. You can't take over an asset that is so toxic that will impact negatively on your own financial position. No investor will want to do that. And CBN will not force you. They want you to accept, based on proper appraisal of their financials, that you can accept and absorb their shock before you can take it over. And no bank was ready to do that. If there was a bank that was willing to do that, CBN would have allowed them to do that. But no bank was ready. No bank was ready, and that's the truth.
Doctor, you have re-emphasized, the problem of poor management that led to the eventual collapse of Heritage Bank, and how, depositors are not really going to be bearing the brunt, especially because they were not the major contributor to the failure of the bank. But I would like for us to talk around the employees of this bank, that is the Heritage Bank, what we understand is that there is the chance of major job losses now that will be coming from Heritage Bank. But what can we do, or what can be done rather, that would help to mitigate the potential job losses based off this decision by the CBN?
The truth is, the staffs will lose their job. Let's say it as it is. I have been privileged by virtue of my banking experience to be in a commercial bank that took over 2 other commercial banks in 2005. People lost their jobs because those bank branches will be closed. A few staffs will be left to help midwife the process of transition. That was in 2005. In 2011, I was in a bank that was taken over by another bank. So I have the experience on both sides. But we knew 2 years before then that our bank was going down. Yes, you may say there are some political undertone, some boardroom squabbles, no problem. But the truth of the matter is, these things will give you signs. So staffs will lose their job to an extent, because if we are taking over and selling off your assets, where are we going to put you? Some of them will get jobs with other banks, but they will be heavily discounted. Discounted meaning that they may not get the job at the level of where they left, because there may be vacancies in other banks, and the banks may say, okay, we are taking you, but we are giving you we are stepping you down by 1 level or 2 level or same level, depending. So there will be job loss. Unfortunately, they will also be paid off. They have to be settled, as in like a severance package. They will be paid off. Some of them may not be interested in doing banking anymore. Maybe this is an opportunity for them to exit banking. Some may use this experience to look for other jobs in other industries or in other banks. But there will definitely be job losses, and that's the truth. They'll be paid off, but there'll be job losses because their employer no longer exists. So if the employer does not exist, where do we put them? Of course, it has its own impact on the unemployment figure now in the economy, but that's the truth.
No, quite unfortunate there, regarding the losses and job losses generally that we cannot, that is inevitable now with Heritage Bank. But Doctor, let us talk to issues around public confidence in the Nigerian banking system. There is a lot of conversations around, transparency and communication and trust between the public and financial institution. Over time, we have seen, unfortunately, that trust kind of dwindle. But then how can we, grow this trust back to, do I say, previous levels that we have seen it in the past? Because we did notice from the social media poll, most people were already, withdrawing their monies from other banks as well, even though the CBN has assured Nigerians that there will be, no other banks that will be going down. But then again, there is the lack of trust that we have between, financial institutions and Nigerians as a whole. How can we uphold that trust moving forward?
Thank you very much, Chiamaka. The truth is, the trust has grossly dwindled, particularly because of monetary policies of the central bank and how these commercial banks themselves operate, and it's in the public domain. One major issue that dwindles public confidence in commercial bank is fraud cases. You are aware of the fraud that crystallized in a tier 1 old generation bank recently. Is in the public domain. Some of these frauds are not properly prosecuted. It took the intervention of the central bank to swing into that commercial bank to identify the fraud, and the staffs that crystallize this fraud are not even penalized in some instances. So there is breakdown of internal control measures of these commercial banks, and these are public funds. Customers put their monies in trust. Now the banks need to deliberately and under the strict supervision of the central bank grow public trust, because people work hard to put their money and earn some interest on top, and you, commercial bank, give it out as loan, and hey, they cannot trust because of some shady things, lack of corporate governance, insider abuse going on in these banks. And some of these frauds, you see that they are even in public domain. The bank does not volunteer the right information. For me, I have always, advocated that banks should keep their customers informed, because you have a large chunk of these customers that are not literate enough to understand the banking terminology, and the banks have not done enough, and across boards now, to enlighten the customers. These customers are the ones giving you the deposit you thrive with. So it's incumbent on you as a financial institution, and I dare say that CBN should up the regulation that these banks must keep abreast with informing the public on what they should know. But banks are not doing that, and they are enjoying the deposits of this customer. Do you know what a bank makes overnight on deposit, on floating income? Is huge. But you don't educate, and bank staffs are paid well. Well, not all of them, some. But again, everybody sees the banker as well paid. A lot of bankers' staff are casualized. Of course, that's not the conversation for today. But this confidence has to be grown deliberately under the supervision of the central bank. It is even in the CBN Act 2007 on how to ensure that banks enlighten themselves. But CBN has not improved on their compliance measures, and even the commercial banks too have, have relaxed in trying to enlighten and build confidence. If there are issues, it should be dealt with and reversed and communicated accordingly, so that this confidence will not deteriorate beyond the level it is as we see today.
Just before we go, Doctor, I would like for us to speak to policymakers and, those in charge of policy making and policy direction. What would you advise at this point, that could be done from the policymakers now to avoid a future reoccurrence of a situation such as this, not with Heritage Bank, of course, but with another bank or other financial institutions within the financial space here in Nigeria?
The truth is that most financial institutions, their financials are doctored. They have three financials: one for the regulator, one for shareholders, one for tax purposes. And professionals sign this document, and it is made public. The truth of the matter is, what happened in Heritage Bank is not worse than what is happening in some present commercial banks. That's the truth. And policy watchers are seeing it. Some of them are even part of the rot going on because of the implementation of policy. So they should be made to step up and held accountable when policies are made, and when they are not being implemented, the gavel should be slammed on them for disciplinary actions, because we need to uphold the institution, because that's the trust that people look at and want to come and even bring money from outside the country to invest even in the financial system. It breeds financial system stability and growth in the economy at the end of the day.
Thank you very much, Dr. Emmanuel Idenyi. Thank you for your insight, all the insight that you've shared with us on today's edition of Business Daily.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure, Chiamaka. Have a good day ahead.
Thank you, Doctor. Well, that is the much that we will be taking on today's edition of Business Daily. And if you are, a depositor or a banker with the Heritage Bank, do well to visit the nearest Heritage Bank branch to lay claims to your deposit, or like the NDIC, that is the Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation, is saying, you can visit the website to lay claims to your money as well. And depositors will be paid up to 5 million naira of their deposit. But if you do have more than that with the bank, then once the assets are liquidated, you will be, given your due money. That is the money that you have with the bank. So just remain calm and remain assured that your monies are safe. And this is according to the Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation. But still, share with us your experience so far in, laying claims to your monies with Heritage Bank. So share with us on social media, and we will be there to, go through your comment and go through your responses. And thank you again for watching today's edition of the program. My name is Chiamaka Nendu. Bye for now.